Hey, hi, how's it going? If you've been here before and you're back for more, I appreciate you to my very core. But if you're new here, welcome. My name is Becca, and I tell your own personal paranormal experiences through short stories. If you have a personal paranormal experience that you'd like me to share and be featured on this channel, make sure to message me on Instagram. The link is in the bio. Without further ado, boo boo boo, here is today's story. Stacey-Jayne, who we're going to refer to her as Stacey throughout this story, grew up in the UK and had a best friend named Jamie. Jamie and Stacey were extremely close and they did absolutely everything together. However, when Stacey went to high school, Jamie ended up enrolling in a different high school, and this ultimately led to them just falling out of touch with each other. Fast forward 2 years, and Stacey, who is 12 years old at the time, is attending her second year of high school. During these 2 years at this high school, Stacey became really close with two girls named Becky and Rachel. Stacey, Becky, and Rachel ultimately became really close friends as they shared a lot of common interests and they just genuinely really liked each other. So one day the girls are in class and it's announced to them that there's going to be a transfer student that will be joining their class. And lo and behold, Jamie walks through the classroom doors. Stacey was thrilled. She hadn't seen Jamie in over 2 years, and she knew that Becky and Rachel would absolutely adore Jamie. And when Jamie saw Stacey, she too was overjoyed at the familiar face in a new school. So after class, Jamie and Stacey both reunite, and Stacey introduces Jamie to Rachel and Becky, and it wouldn't take long before they all kind of just accepted Jamie into their inner circle. So a couple weeks go by and Becky's birthday's approaching, and Becky convinced her parents to have a sleepover at her place where she invited Rachel, Jamie, and Stacey. So December 10th, Becky's birthday finally arrives, and all the girls head over to Becky's house where they have an absolute blast. They have a pizza party, they have popcorn, and they danced until about midnight that night until Becky's parents finally came down and said, "You know what, guys, you're being a little loud, so I think it's time we pack it in and call it a night." All the girls were really respectful of Becky's parents' wishes and headed off to Becky's room for the night. But once the girls arrived into Becky's room, none of them were tired, so they just started talking. And that conversation of just talking led to them exchanging ghost stories between one another. As the girls are engaging in these ghost story conversations, Jamie, who's been particularly quiet throughout this conversation, pipes up and says, "Well, have any of you actually ever seen a ghost?" Now, the way Jamie projected this question was more of a serious note than a joking manner, so it kind of took the girls back a little bit. And after a long, awkward silence, the girls replied, "Well, no, I don't think so." To which then Jamie replied with, "Okay, cool, yeah, no, me either." The girls thought it was a little weird, but they just brushed it off and carried on talking about their ghost stories until they ultimately fell asleep. During Stacey's sleep, however, she experienced a nightmare involving Freddy Krueger. Now, Stacey was sleeping on the floor in a sleeping bag, and when she woke up from this nightmare, she was looking directly at her reflection as a mirror had been placed kind of leaning up against a wall in Becky's bedroom. So, as she's staring at her reflection after being awoken from this nightmare, she tries to convince herself, "Oh my gosh, it just must have been all that ghost story talk, and now my brain just got to me." So, she's ultimately trying to calm herself down from this nightmare. So after a few minutes of just trying to calm herself down and reassure herself, she realizes that these techniques aren't working. So Stacey sits up from her laying position to try and really calm herself down from this nightmare she had just experienced. When Stacey sits up, she looks over to where Jamie was sleeping. Now Jamie was sleeping on the bottom bunk of Becky's bunk bed, but sitting at the foot of Jamie's bed was this boy. The boy was wearing gray pants, he had a matching sweater, he was wearing black shoes, and he was also wearing a baseball cap. Stacey could see him clear as day. And knowing there were no other males in the house besides Becky's dad, this really terrified Stacey. As Stacey is staring at this boy, the boy begins fiddling with his baseball cap and then looks directly at Jamie and says, "It's okay, I'm here." Before Stacey can even react to what she is seeing and now hearing, the boy looks up and notices that Stacey can see him and becomes very angry. Then he takes his finger, puts it over his mouth to make the shushing motion, and points to the mirror that Stacey had been looking into. Stacey then turns very quickly to look at the mirror, and when she looks back to where the boy was sitting, he's no longer there. This experience absolutely terrified Stacey, and it ultimately led to her having a panic attack. Her panic attack woke up all the girls in Becky's bedroom, as well as Becky's parents. Becky's mom ended up comforting Stacey, and after a few hours was able to get the girls and Stacey to settle back down to bed. In the morning, the girls went down to the kitchen to grab their breakfast, where Stacey would embarrassingly apologize to Becky's parents for what had happened. After her apology, the girls and Stacey all gathered their breakfast and went back to Becky's bedroom to eat. Once they were in Becky's room, it was like Stacey was now in an interrogation room as all the girls had 1,000 questions as to what had happened the night before. So Stacey started explaining her experience to the girls. And about halfway through, Rachel and Becky kind of started snickering amongst each other, thinking, you know what? No, this must have been a dream. You must have just imagined this all. But Jamie, who looked extremely serious, looked Stacey dead in the eyes and said, "What did he look like?" So Stacey explained he was wearing gray pants, a matching jacket, black shoes, and he was also wearing a baseball cap. Jamie then completely broke down and started crying. After collecting herself, she would explain to the girls the real reasoning as to why she transferred schools. She would go on to tell them that she had this really close friend named Dwayne, and they would do everything together. They were completely inseparable. And sadly, he lost his battle to skin cancer, and she was having a really hard time coping with his loss. Jamie went on to say that the boy that Stacey was describing sounded exactly like him, as he would always wear a baseball cap and constantly fiddle with it in an attempt to hide his cancer from the rest of the world. A few days later, Jamie presented Stacey with her yearbook, where Stacey would confirm 100% without a doubt that the boy she saw sitting next to Jamie on the bottom bunk on December 4th was in fact Dwayne. If you enjoyed today's recording, please leave a like or a comment. It's super rewarding. Wishing you nothing but a beautiful, blissful day. See you all next Friday. Bye-bye.